Good morning, everyone. It's Wednesday, it's 11, and that means it's time for Elevenses with the reps at Diesel Bookstore. Welcome, and thank you for joining us, everyone. We get together every Wednesday here in our safe book space, and we meet with our publishers' representatives and our booksellers, and sometimes other people as well. And we talk about new and recently released upcoming titles that our fabulous professionals want to tell you about. And these guys are really good. I never leave Evans's session without either renewed excitement for the books that I've already read, or what is more common, adding to my to-be-read pile exponentially. And I think that will happen to you as well today. And to that end, we post the links for all the books we talk about today in the chat area there, so you can go ahead and listen to what everybody has to say and then order them later at your leisure. And before I introduce everybody and we get going, because there's some fabulous books we're going to talk about today, I do want to tell you about a couple of things that are happening at the store in the next week. We have on Tuesday, the 7th, April 7th, so that's next Tuesday, we've got Leonard and Jessie Maltin, and they're going to be discussing and signing family movie night menus, recipes and films for unforgettable times together. That sounds like it is going to be so much fun. So Leonard Maltin and Jessie Maltin, and they'll be there talking about their movie night menus, family movie night menus. That's Tuesday, April 7th at 6:30 p.m. And then next Wednesday, I want to start talking about this because this is going to be great. We have in the morning at our usual time, we have our Elevenses, but we have a special guest on Elevenses next Wednesday, and that's going to be Sonya Walger. And Sonya Walger, you know, as an actress and also an author. She wrote Lion, and her new book is Wifehouse. And she'll be here on Elevenses talking about that in the morning at 11. And then that evening at 6:30 p.m., she will actually be in the store with Jennifer Pasiloff, and they will be discussing, and Sonya will be signing Wifehouse. So make sure that you join us first on Elevenses and hear our interview with Sonya. We're really looking forward to that. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then she'll be in the store later that day. So that's what's coming up. We have more events, of course. Very exciting roster of events coming up in the next few months, and you can see all of that at dieselbookstore.com, also at your leisure. But before you do that, let's talk to our reps today. Joining us, we have with us today Patricia Nelson from Princeton University Press. Welcome, Patricia. We have Tom Benton from Penguin. Hi, Tom. And Julia Callahan from Hachette joining us as well. Three absolutely marvelous reps, if I ever saw a rep. And they've got lots of great books to talk about today. Julia, why don't you lead us off?
Sure thing. Everyone, please excuse my voice. I'm sort of getting over a cold, so I'm a little nasally. Apologize. But my first book this is a debut fiction. It's called American Han. This is by an author, Lisa Lee. So many people in Southern California know Lisa C. I want to make sure I differentiate. This is not Lisa C. This is Lisa Lee. I did have one store pitch me an event for Lisa C. when they saw this book, and I said, you got to reread the author name. So I want to make sure we know that. But you can see on the cover the great Percival Everett has blurred this book. And I just want to say this book, so this is like it's a novel about immigrants in the United States. It's about an immigrant family, Korean American. The husband and wife, the parents of this family, immigrated from South Korea to the Bay Area, like Napa area. And then this family, like, it's sort of, when we enter the stage, it's sort of falling apart. This family, the mother of this family has sort of seen her daughter grow up in the United States with much more sort of, as a woman, much more freedom to sort of follow her joy and do what she wants. And the mother has sort of taken that to heart and started to do it herself. So, you know, for when we first meet her, she's living in this apartment, this like basement apartment in San Francisco, and it's sort of a drab if you've ever been in one of those basement apartments in San Francisco, you know, it's like not a great place to be. You're like, they're very dark and damp and cold, but she is sort of like living her, in a way, her dream for the first time. And so we see this family sort of as it fractures, and as it the ways in which it comes together and the ways in which it fractures as they sort of navigate, you know, the different generations of immigration into America. It's an immigrant novel, unlike I have read before. I feel like it tackles topics and like looks at sort of hard parts of um immigration, and also like allows the characters to like not be these perfect American immigrants. And so I just think it's like it's so beautifully written. Um Percival Everett calls it tone perfect, a beautiful, important novel that will leave a mark. It's also had great uh reviews already. It's been getting, Tom told me actually the other day, it got a stellar review in the Washington Post. It's been just really I think hitting the right spots with people. But like I said, the writing is absolutely brilliant. Lisa Lee is an author that I think we're going to see for a long time to come. She is based in Los Angeles, so this is an LA author. And it came out yesterday. So this is American Han by Lisa Lee.
Been sort of waiting for this one because I feel like I saw it quite a while ago, and which does happen.
I think I sent it to you a while ago.
Yes, which does happen. And the writing is so lovely. It's such a great time for novels like this. And there are, you know, Tom can tell you he's got some coming as well. I know. And it just seems to be, I mean, it's definitely a popular topic for which novelists are winding stories. And this one is particularly well told. And like, as you said, Julia, it's sort of taking it the slightly different angle, not the traditional type, which you have to do
Yep.
if you want to stand out. But I really love the freshness of the voice here, which kind of distinguishes it from other similar topics novels. So it's great. I think it's going to do really well too.
Agree.
Yeah. Thanks, Julia. Patricia, what's your first book today?
I have a spectacular book. It's so beautiful. It's brand new. You can see it's called Gold from Newton's Apple Tree.
That is beautiful.
This is a book of historical recipes for natural inks, paints, and dyes. It's a simply gorgeous book. If you're familiar with some of our books on color, this joins an exquisite group. Nabil Ali is a research artist and tutor at the University of Cambridge, and all of this information comes from the Cambridge University Botanic Garden. So we're looking at unique historical recipes from the 3rd century to the 16th, adaptations of medieval dye and ink, but above all, it's also, of course, botanical. If you see the first page here, you can see the index is set up by color, which gives you a sense of how it's done. And each section would feature exquisite botanical illustrations of many plants. For example, here I'm in yellow and gold, so I'm in saffron and crocus, giving us an idea of what we would find to make crocus into gold. The book is just sort of magical and beautiful and alchemical. The title comes from a color derived from the brown bark of a tree, an apple tree descended from one of that belonged to Sir Isaac Newton. And so the transformative alchemical quality is this brown bark turning into gold. And there are some incredible recipes. The recipes have a medieval or Renaissance tone to them. Some of them are from Leonardo da Vinci, different places. The measurements might be something the size of a chickpea or 1 part dragon's blood. Some of the gold recipes would include making a red gold, for example, from something like aloe, and then painting it, as a Nabil does, onto perhaps silver or tin foil. Thus, you have gold. You have gold leaf. And it's full of surprises. It's really, really nicely made. This would show you something like the end of the yellow section, the colors from Nabil's practice, and all of them identified with myrrh, turmeric, aloe, a greater celandine, crocus, cornflower, for example, in this particular section. You could go on to blue and purple. It's a treasure. It's interesting botanically. It's interesting for art history. It's interesting for crafters. These are actually doable recipes. People are sort of caught up in that kind of makerly world. There's always the hope that you might have some woad and you could paint your face blue. And this might tell you how to derive that fantastic pigment. So totally beautiful and wonderful book. Here we go.
I love this book. I have to have this book. It's amazing.
I wanted to show you too. You'll remember Nature's Palette. So
Yes.
this is one of the most fabulous books. And so the two together, a must-have duo.
Wow.
And
Nice.
and so
But that book
they
is
really are wonderful.
exquisite. It is
It
absolutely
is.
gorgeous,
is.
but it's unbelievably interesting. I have a friend who is working on a book. I'm helping him. He teaches at CalArts, and he teaches a course on color and
Yeah.
on perception of color and how colors are made, specific colors, and then people who can see tetrachromats who can see more colors, and also how you can't see all of those colors on the computer. And so what looking at screens is doing to our perception of color. So it's absolutely fascinating. He doesn't have
that's
this book,
great.
and I am going to get it for him.
Well,
And
color anyway.
probably will
If you
keep
get
it.
involved in paint, if you get involved in watercolors, things that are derived from minerals, mineral colors, different chemical colors, different
Yeah.
botanical colors. It's really, there's a great joy even in the names of the colors and
I
of the
can't
plant.
wait. I'm super excited about this book. See, this is what happens every time.
True.
Thanks, Patricia. Tom.
My first book.
Yes.
My first book is the new Tana French, The Keeper. So this is, I mean, no bigger fan than me of Tana French. I mean, we started with In the Woods, and she did the Dublin what became the Dublin Murder novels, the Dublin Murder Squad novels, and then a couple of books ago she started a new trilogy, and that started with The Searcher and then The Hunter, and she finishes the trilogy with The Keeper, which is on sale this week. And so although I never really doubted that Tana French could land the plane, but with a trilogy, you never know, exactly how, you're hoping and praying that it's gonna be as good as you hoped it would be, as it should be, and of course it is. It's in The Searcher. She started with, she introduced us to a former Chicago cop, Cal Hooper, who has retired to Western Ireland, small town Ardnakelty in Ireland, in Western Ireland. Couldn't be more different than Chicago. He thought he was escaping, he was escaping, being an American policeman. But crime found him in Ardnakelty as well. And she kind of set these books up, especially starting in The Searcher, as her version of, it's sort of like she took some of the tropes of the American Western and set them in rural Ireland. And so this still has all of the books have the feel of a Western. And but the sense of place, I mean, any time you're in a Tana French novel, each of these books, I think all three start in a pub, because the conversations, the hilarity, the darkness, the mix of hilarity and darkness in the conversations at the pub tell you everything you know about each of the characters. And so this book, it starts there, and things seem to be calming down in this small town, and then a young woman of the town is found drowned in the river, and slowly but surely, this sets everyone at each other in this small town. So the crime slowly reveals itself. But to me, the pleasures of a Tana French novel are in the characters, the setting, the language, all those things, and then crime is just the cherry on top. She is such a good writer, and also to me is amazing, and I think as much as I've loved each of these novels, knowing when to move on is also important. And this is probably the right place, at least for now, to leave Cal Hooper. And to say the ending delivers doesn't do it justice. It is a fantastic ending to this trilogy. Very moving, just exactly right. So if you haven't read the other two novels, all the reviews are starting to flow. and everyone said, all the reviewers say, jump in here if you must, but if you do read this, you can read this without having read either of the other two, but then it'll just make you want to read the first
Right.
two. So you pick your way in. Start, read the Searcher and then the Hunter and then the Keeper, or just read the Keeper, but read them because they're that good. Maureen Corrigan reviewed it on Fresh Air yesterday, and she says, I don't ordinarily review novels that conclude a series because the power of a finale derives from all that's come before. But if you're game to read the first two Cal Hooper books, or if you're already a fan, know that The Keeper solidifies this series' status as a contemporary classic. So I'm so happy to deliver the new Tana French into the world, The Keeper. It's fantastic.
It's a tricky thing writing, I think, a trilogy. You're a genre writer, and if you have an ongoing character like Connolly, for example, that's in every book, he's in every book,
Yeah.
or he starts a new character. But to sort of write a trilogy inside already a series of crime novels, that it's a risk, because they are connected very specifically in this. But she does it, and readers are incredibly loyal to her because she is able to pull it off. And I do also in a very editor school marmish way, like demand that books stand on their own, even if they're part
Right.
because they can't stand on their own. They should all be one book. So the reading experience is enhanced by reading all of them, but they can be read on their own. And she definitely,
Absolutely.
and she does that also.
Yeah.
And what you say, Tana French, what you say about that the crime is almost not incidental,
Right.
like the cherry on top. It's like the best of those sort of Brit murder shows,
Yeah.
or crime shows like Broadchurch and Happy Valley, and they're really so character driven and explore the relationships between the characters and the place and
Yes.
how that affects those things, and then of course and crime.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because she is a crime novelist, but she's that, plus she's just a really good novelist, period.
Yes, exactly.
And I hate that we have to wait usually 2 years in between books, but it's okay. That's the pace.
Oh, I mean, I'm still waiting for Deepti Kapoor. Okay, so
Yes, true. That's
just
right. Who knows?
who knows?
And just to say it also, this is the end of this trilogy, and I don't know where she'll go next, but it's not as if there won't be another Tana French.
Right, exactly. It carries on. Yeah. Thank you, Tom. All right, Julia, back to you.
All right. Well, speaking of highly anticipated books that we were waiting for, this is not a sequel, but it is the next book from Lily Brooks-Dalton, who wrote The Light Pirate. This is called Ruins. We've been getting really great feedback about this book. It got a starred review in Booklist, and people have just been absolutely falling all over themselves about how much they love it. But this book, what's interesting about this is it takes place in the far, like, distant future, like maybe 1,000 years from now. It's sort of unclear, but it's very distant future, and it's about an archaeologist. And it's hard to, so there is like a twist in the middle of it that I'm going to do my absolute darndest not to give away. But it's basically like this archaeologist is trying to find this thing that she thinks will, sort of put a lot of elements together about a civilization that they've sort of found, and they're not recreating, but like that they're sort of trying to figure out more about. And so in a lot of ways, it's a novel about that, about like how we look back on civilizations, that how we sort of put things together, all of that. And then it's also about sort of someone who has this like drive in their career, and is trying to find something that is monumentally important, and sort of how that drives them. Jeff Vandermeer is a great sort of analogy. or analogous author to this book, and he called this a stunning mystery wedded to an adventurous journey. Ruins is a unique and beautiful novel from a major talent. So this is Ruins by Lily Brooks-Dalton. Her previous book, The Light Pirate, was a GMA book club pick and was much beloved, and so this is much anticipated and is absolutely wonderful.
I feel like I've been seeing this book everywhere, reviews of it and talk about it and articles. It's popping up everywhere. I think it's going to be really have legs and and be The Light Pirate was beloved, and we did really well with The Light Pirate, as I recall, and it just kept going.
Yeah, this one also sort of reminded me of Emily St. John Mandel's Station 11. It has that same sort of like, it is kind of sci-fi, you know, in that it takes place so far in the future, but it's like very grounded in reality. So
Right, which is this is kind of a new sort of like kind of dystopian. Well, I guess it makes sense actually. This new dystopian fiction looks a lot like, you know, current reality, and so that's
doesn't it though?
Novelists are responding, so they've kind of adjusted a little bit so that the world is, you know, basically, this is it. Only, you know, it's in the future or now or it's all the same day. So she's definitely out ahead of that.
Yeah, and I just can't overemphasize how like satisfying the sort of twist in them. It happens in the middle of the story, but how satisfying it is and how much it like makes you really think about our culture and society and, you know, all that.
So many smart books. It's great. I love it. Thanks, Julia. All right. Patricia, I know, is going to have another smart book right
I have
now.
a mighty book. I have a huge book. James Joyce, A Political Life. Let's take a look at the spine. A magnificent, penetrating, revelatory, new intellectual biography of Joyce as a politically engaged thinker, very engaged by Irish nationalism, exile, and European upheaval. It's published posthumously and at 900 pages almost. It is incomplete or a particular part of Joyce's life, only going so far forward as Trieste. In the foreword by Richard Spoo, he says, we have this large, luminous fragment which takes the story from Joyce's early Dublin years up to his pivotal departure from Ireland in 1904, his early self-exile, and eventually departure from Trieste in 1915. The point of this book is really Joyce's political life in politically charged times, the Parnell split, the Celtic revival, the Abbey riots, the Home Rule crisis and the First World War, the Easter Rising, and the rise of fascism. And it reframes Joyce as a politically conscious Irish nationalist who is nevertheless disdainful of Irish victimhood and skeptical of nationalism, but powerful about Ireland. It really, really intensely explores Joyce's lifelong engagement with Charles Stewart Parnell. And I think this part of the book really sticks in my mind as we imagine an 8-year-old Joyce in 1890 as the Charles Stewart Parnell scandal of involvement with a divorced woman tore up Irish nationalism in that very, very conventional and close society, and created a very bitter period. And this was all around the little Joyce at the dinner table, in the arguments among his family. So we can picture this precocious, nearsighted, intense little Joyce. If you love Joyce, somehow you can see him almost overwhelmed with the anxiety of the political moment. Now, this takes him on and kind of rebuilds Joyce, who is, of course, fixed in the Richard Ellman portrait. In fact, there haven't been a lot of big biographies of Joyce because the Richard Ellman towers over us, so large that Harvard did an entire book just about Richard Ellman's biography of Joyce. But here, we don't have that austere, remote modernist. We have a much more engaged and interesting vision of Joyce. So it includes all kinds of critical analysis. It looks at all sorts of lesser-known papers and Italian lectures and family, and very much on his European life in Trieste, which is fascinating. And, of course, starting to get some wonderful reviews in Ireland finding that he scrutinizes Irish politics in astonishing detail and depth. Be prepared for a deep dive, and that it's definitely a posthumous tour de force. We're going to throw around the magisterial word, which is a big one, but which we think applies here. The Irish Independent says Frank Callahan's James Joyce is a rescue act. It rescues Joyce from the lazy habit of treating him as a writer who transcended politics by transcending Ireland. An important book. So if you know a Joycean, they're around, or if you happen to be one, this is lots of fun and quite a magnificent book. And we wish Frank Callahan could have persevered and brought us more. Thank you.
Although 900 pages is definitely an ask.
I guess it would have been 3,000 pages if we could have gone on to.
I mean, with Joyce, though, yeah, with Joyce, you just almost have to, I think.
Well, this entire stack here, this is all Joyce. Joyce and Joycean. I have McLuhan's son's book on thunder words in Finnegan's Wake.
Wow. There's a statistic that Ulysses is the least read purchased book. And
I think maybe Finnegan's Wake would be worse. But actually, I had great Joycean professors, 2 of them. And so I was introduced to a very delightful Joyce and do occasionally revisit. Maybe
so I think that makes a huge difference. The way you come to him and the way I had a typical Joyce experience up until the point where I visited Ireland and was in Dublin I don't know how long ago it was, almost 10 years, I think, at this point. But we decided randomly, it was decided for us that we would take this Ulysses tour. And I was like, okay, 3-hour Ulysses tour, no problem. Jet lag or anything. And I really didn't, and I came to it with these sort of apprehension that I had approaching Joyce, and it was amazing. It was amazing because the way it was explained, and it just opened up everything. And I enjoyed every minute of that insane tour. It was a very
Must
small
have gone
tour.
to the tower and had a cheese sandwich.
We went everywhere.
Looked for periwinkle.
We did the entire walk. The whole thing, the whole walk of the book. But he was amazing, and obviously he knew it inside out and had been doing it for a long time. But he was just terrific. And it opened it up in a whole new way. And that's something that a book like this can do, I think, for you. If you, it's a start anyway. It's funny because we had, I think it was last week, Andrea was on and she had like this giant Oscar Wilde book written by his grandson, which is another sort of like really deep dive into this politics of Oscar Wilde and what happened after his death and rehabilitating his image, actually, which was not for a very long time what it is now. So yeah, put these 2 together, you got
have you covered for a few hours of reading.
That's right. Thanks, Patricia. All right, Tom, back to you.
This is apropos of what we're talking about. So I went to, I wasn't sure if I had the Joyce biography, but Oscar Wilde, also Richard Ullman, also did Oscar Wilde.
Okay, I did not even know that.
Yeah, he did the big
We
ones.
did not decide that we were all going to match outfits today.
I'm amazed I was able to just grab that off my shelf, but there it was from decades ago.
I've got it in here somewhere. Oh yeah, here he is.
There it is.
Okay. So my next book is Underwater by Tara Menon. So this is Riverhead. One of their specialties, as I always talk about, is finding debut novelists that just, you have a real writer here. And so this is a first novel, and it is absolutely gorgeous. This is about a young woman in her 20s named Marissa. We first meet her in New York City as a storm is approaching. And it takes her back to her time in Thailand when she had lost her mother at a very young age. Her parents were scientists, and her father took her to Thailand after her mother's death to continue her mother's work in the ocean. So she grew up in Thailand at the beach, and she became best friends with a young girl named Ariel. And so they spent most of their time in the water. So the book celebrates the friendship, the friendship of the 2 girls, the beauty that they find underwater. I mean, is just spectacular. But slowly but surely, you realize that the storm that's approaching in 2012 is Hurricane Sandy. And though they spent all their time in the water and they learned how to avoid danger in Thailand in the water, there was finally a wave that they were not able to survive. Her friend was not able to survive. So it's about both hurricanes, the approach of Hurricane Sandy, and the memory of the terrible tsunami in Thailand. And so the book braids these two stories together. She's haunted by the memories of what happened in Thailand, but also the beauty of their friendship, the beauty of the natural world. I mean, this is definitely a book that is subtly or not so subtly about climate. I mean, this is definitely a book that is telling us we have to value the beauty in our world because look at what's happening. But you have the friendship between the women that is just beautiful, but also that it reminded me, like, there's a Richard Powers aspect to this as well that really drew me in. And this is one of those books that we talk about here that reps are telling other reps. When we first got a manuscript, one rep read it and she said to everyone, "You've got to read this book." And it just took over all the sales force. And then we have something at obviously Penguin Random House has a lot of books we publish every month, every day, every week. But there is a group within that is constantly changing, but they try to pick a book. It's called a tidal wave. And quarterly, they pick a book corporately that, just that this group responded to the most. It's very organic. And so for the first part of 2026, the pick is Underwater. And that comes from people who are in all parts of the company, not just Penguin. So this is a book that really delivers just an absolutely immersive read. Also reminded me of Katie Kitamura in its spare prose. So if you are a fan of Katie's, this is a book for you. And we have a quote from Katie Kitamura: "A novel of remarkable delicacy and power. Underwater is about grief, friendship, home, and longing." Menon writes exquisite sentences, sensual and particular, each containing an entire world. So really excited to have this debut out now, Underwater.
There's nothing like in-house enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Word
Really
of
is.
mouth, and I have benefited from it before,
Yeah.
and so I know how powerful it can be. Yes, Patricia.
We're talking about matching clothes today. Incredibly, Tara Menon is a literary professor at Harvard, and
Yes, she is.
Princeton is publishing her book in September. In
Oh
fact,
my
I was
God.
just writing it up this week, and it's one of those
Wow.
occasions, this has happened to me before, where we're publishing the intense scholarly work of a person who's also often a novelist of great elaboration. So her
Right.
forthcoming book is called Speaking Parts: Conversation, Character, and Social Worlds in 19th Century British Novels. And it
That's right.
quantifies the dialogue in 1,000 novels. This is a digital kind of research, and then talks about the nature of dialogue and people like Jane Austen and George Eliot. And I was quite enthused. And then I was just looking at your book and thinking, oh, I threw that into a basket somewhere. And just, isn't that amazing?
That is
So
amazing.
I'm interested to know what the dialogue is like in this
And that
book.
is such a spread. It
Yeah.
really is.
Well, and
Yeah.
I did know that that's her area of study at Harvard, and the work she does and teaches, which is so different from the debut novel. But how amazing. I love
Yeah.
this.
So we both have Tara Menon books.
That's great.
And I'll be talking about that enthusiasm to my colleagues as a frame for this. It's happened to me before. I've had a scholar of Lucretius did this intense book on Lucretius, but she was also a novelist for Tor, things like
Oh
that.
my God.
That I can see really pretty easily, actually. I can see
But
that.
also,
Anyway,
I love this
bravo.
conversation. Yeah, this conversation, like, I wouldn't know if we hadn't been on having this conversation. I would
Yeah.
eventually know, but I wouldn't know right now. So that's exciting.
Elevenses.
Exactly.
This is where you come for this kind of thing. It's an absolute geek fest, and we love
That's
every minute of it. And it's also, just as an aside, a really gorgeous cover. As
absolutely.
Julia pointed out, it's a really beautiful, watercolory, gorgeous cover. Excellent. All right, well, Julia, start us off with our last round of the day.
All right. Well, I brought a cookbook because I can't help myself. And this is actually the 50th anniversary edition of Jacques Pepin's Complete Techniques. Um, and I wanted to highlight this because I feel like one of the things, because I love cookbooks so much and I talk to so many people about cookbooks, one of the things that comes up again and again is like, there are these like sort of barriers to entry sometimes with cooking and with like, people hit a wall where they're like, I don't know how to do this. Or like, you get a little bit more of a complicated recipe book and it tells you to julienne something and you're like, well, now what is that? And this cookbook, it's the 50th anniversary of this cookbook, but I think like what a great gift. I wish someone had given it to me when I was younger. Because it goes through, I mean, just picture by picture, like goes through and shows you exactly how to do things. Simple things like chopping onions and, like things that, as you cook, you sort of get better and better at. But then also more complicated things. There's a whole section on deboning a chicken and on, doing these sort of more complicated cooking techniques that I think really, how to make a bouquet garni, these kinds of things, preparing different kinds of beans and how to shell beans and which ones to shell, how to shuck an oyster, which if you get me in person, I will teach you because I shuck an oyster faster than almost anyone I know. My dad used to be able to beat me, but I would joke if he ever shut up, he could beat me, but he talked too much to do it. So so this is just, I think, just a great like for the person in your life who is maybe they're, starting to cook for themselves for the first time. Maybe they want to learn how to be a better cook and they're, self-taught. They're not going to culinary school or something like that. I think this is just a great, like one of those books that you have on your shelf so that when you need to reference it, it's there. This is a beautiful 50th anniversary edition. We do have some signed copies floating around, so I think Diesel might have some. But in any case, they do have copies, no matter if they're signed or not. But of course, from the legendary Jacques Pepin, who knows better than anyone how to do all of these techniques. So yeah, this is the 50th anniversary edition of Jacques Pepin's Complete Techniques.
So absolutely a great gift book, but also a good book to just have on your shelf,
Yeah.
for your collection. There's a few that are really good to have. There's like a great bread book and there's a good baking book and there's,
Yeah.
things come back to all the time.
Salt,
And
fat,
this-
acid, heat. Yeah.
yeah, and this is one of those, and I think, people often hear, Jacques Pepin, I think it's complicated French cooking, and I can't do it, and it's not, actually. It's a lot of it is much simpler than you think after having looked at a lot of Jacques Pepin books. And then
Yes.
Julie and I share a love of cookbooks and music books, so, I'm have the same sort of trajectory here, talking about books, but cookbooks. But it's not nearly as difficult as you think it is, or as intimidating, even though. And it's just a great. And it's one of those you want to hand down and give to somebody, and send them off with it and set them up with it, and it's really a great book.
Yeah. And I think like having a technique book, like that's kind of actually rare in the cookbook world, particularly now. I feel like we get so many just like different types of cookbook, but oftentimes people don't stop to say, hey, you might not know how to do this thing.
Right. And
know.
some really basic stuff, actually. And
Yeah.
because you don't know the basic stuff that like when my grandmother used to show me how she made amazing baked goods, and my grandmother could only tell me like, yeah, how much, like this much. And then you just, and it's this much. And I know you also have that experience
I do.
in cooking.
Yes.
And so like, but no, what your grandmother was actually doing, there's a name for that, laminating or whatever it is,
Yeah.
and this is very useful to know.
And I think it's sometimes intimidating when you come up to those
Yeah.
words in cookbooks.
For
Someone
sure.
tells you to sous vide something and you're like, now
Right. Right.
what exactly is that? And then it's sort of having it explained to you, it becomes much more like, oh yeah, that's doable. Okay, got it.
Exactly. A great book, a great standard to have in your kitchen. Thanks, Julia.
Sure thing.
Patricia?
We have a literary surprise just coming out, which is tremendously exciting. Troubled Lands, Stories from Mexico and Cuba. These stories were translated by Langston Hughes and have not been presented together in book form ever, and really just are not known. So it's quite an exciting moment. Uh, Langston Hughes knew Mexico. He was estranged, the family was estranged from his father, who worked in Mexico. But eventually, as a young person, he visited there and thereafter had a deep familiarity. And in May 1935, as he was again in Mexico, he talks excitedly, saying almost all the authors of these countries, Mexico and Cuba, are left, and some are even lefter than left. So we were really looking at a socialist, Black, Latin American, Mexico, and Cuba connection that's full of dynamism, very exciting. Some of you might know the Chicago Institute just had a big show for Elizabeth Catlett, for example. That period was just so dynamic. He was in Mexico City. He stayed for about 5 months. He translated short fiction from prominent Mexican and Cuban writers, and this brings their work together. The stories are full of revolution and uprising and sugarcane and corrupt generals and American imperialists, and they shine a light on the period. We don't know the authors. I had an exciting conversation with Paul Yamazaki saying, oh my goodness, we don't know the names. Rafael Felipe Munez, Nelly Campobello, Pablo de la Torrienta Brau, Juan de la Cabada, and many more. It's aligned with Langston Hughes' very active political life. He had been a defender of the 9 Scottsboro Boys. He had campaigned for the jailed Haitian poet Jacques Romain. He would later travel to Spain and report on the Civil War, the Spanish Civil War, and even begin translating Federico Garcia Lorca. So it has a beautiful and substantial introduction, was edited and brought together by Ricardo Wilson, and it has a lot of vitality and excitement in showing the era and giving us kind of a sense of place. There's been a lot of excitement and early reviews to read this newly published work in English and have it so well framed. It's overdue. And there's just, I think, a lot of excitement to be able to see again something of this period and of Langston Hughes. There's not much illustration, but certainly this very well-known and wonderful drawing of Langston Hughes by Mario Carreño, who was only 16 at the time and went on to become a major modernist. A few little glimpses. This is a Munez story actually published in Esquire in the 30s. So something new. And we're really, really proud of this.
What a fascinating book. I'm curious where these all were before they were all gathered together here.
Well, they were known, I think, in the Hughes estate, and some of them had been published, but they just had not been, we had not had them together and
Compiled,
properly
right.
edited and really, an understanding of what that period meant for Hughes. It's just, I think, in my mind, just kind of exciting to imagine the energy and dynamism of Mexico. I've seen a lot of artwork from that time and Black life, and the idea of, as his father did, leaving this country, just simply could not live under Jim Crow anymore. His father left the family and lived in Mexico. I think the first time he was there, he was just a child with his mother, and there was an earthquake in Mexico City. They had only been there briefly. He fled and had a very checkered kind of childhood, raised partly by grandmother and different kinds of isolation, but did finally get back to Mexico. Didn't really heal the separation from his father, but did take on the place and take that as a part of his heritage.
Totally fascinating. And like you say, new, like we haven't seen anything like this. Wonderful.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I like things that extend. You have the Harlem Renaissance, but then, you see that this goes in other places. Yale had an art book that put Harlem Renaissance painters in different geographies and influences around the world. And it's just exciting to see that these things are not isolated, but are full of connection.
Right. Great. Thank you so much, Patricia. All right, Tom, let's wrap it up for the day.
Okay, so my final book is Jenny Lawson's How to Be Okay When Nothing Is Okay, which I don't know, any time would be a great time to publish this book, but I think this week in particular, perfect time because nothing is okay. And what better person to make you feel like you can get through it than Jenny Lawson. So Penguin actually published her first book, Let's Pretend This Never Happened, maybe 10 years ago. And at that time, she was known as the Bloggess because it was the era of blogs, and she was she had really built a following of people through her blog. And then we published Let's Pretend This Never Happened. That was actually an Amy Einhorn book, and Amy Einhorn had her own imprint at Putnam. Um, then she followed Amy Einhorn to another publisher. Anyway, she's now back at Penguin, and this is her first real self-help book. But it's a self-help book as only Jenny Lawson could give you a self-help book. It's hilarious. What I love about her is that she is right up front with all of the things she suffers from: depression, anxiety, ADHD. I mean, that is part of who she is, and that is why she's so trusted in when people come up to her. That this book comes out of her readers coming to her and saying, how do you do it? How do you keep creating? How do you keep going even when it seems impossible? And so these are the 100 tips and tricks that she's come up with for her own life that she wants to share with everyone else. But she can't help but be, it's hilarious. It's real, and that's what I think is so important about her humor, is that it is so real and raw and funny that it goes down really easily. She has chapter titles like "Wash Your Brain More Than You Wash Your Bra," which sleep, you beautiful human, sleep. Working on easy mode is still working. Asking for accommodations. And celebrate good times. Come on, make it a habit to celebrate good things. So she's a treasure. And also, in the time since we published her first book, she's now a bookseller, an independent bookseller. She has her own store in San Antonio called the Nowhere Bookshop. So it's really wonderful to have a new book at this time from her. I think the author I keep thinking of in conversation with her is Matt Haig, who also, he did a book for us called The Comfort Book. And I think this is another version of a comfort book. But Matt, like Jenny, is very open about his own struggles with mental health. And so what better person to bring you relief and comfort than Matt Haig or now Jenny Lawson? So How to Be Okay When Nothing Is Okay.
I mean, I think just seeing that title is enough to and to get you to pick up the book and start leafing through it, right? I think that's what we all need. And the little humor goes a long way, I think, especially when it's not mean-spirited in any way, and it's very open, honest, but also funny. So the title really does speak for itself, doesn't it?
No, exactly. It would at any time, I think, but now especially.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that is feeling okay is a good way to end for the day. We're all feeling okay.
I always feel okay in this space, so thank you.
That's right. This is the safe space over here, the happy space. And so that is a good place to now. We're all feeling okay. We can go face the rest of the week with books, armed with some absolutely fantastic books, which we all appreciate you bringing today. Tom Benton from Penguin, Julia Callahan from Hachette, and Patricia Nelson from Princeton University Press. You guys always deliver. I got my finger on the order button for books right now. So thank you again. And thank you to Joey behind the scenes for posting all of the links and the covers. Joey, we appreciate you. And everybody for tuning in today. And please come back next week when, once again, we will have our special author interview. We'll be talking to Sonya Walger ahead of her appearance at the store Diesel, and she'll be talking about Wifehouse, which is a great book and very interesting. So we will see you for that. And in the meantime, everybody, have a great week and happy reading. We'll see you next week.